For the last 2 years, I have traveled the world for 6 months and only worked for 6 months. And today I'm gonna show you how I made that possible, how I saved up the money, how I spend the money, and most importantly, how I travel. Because when I'm traveling for those 6 months, I'm not working at all. The main thing that I'm worried about is breaking down along the way. My body's not prepared. Hopefully, everything goes okay.
So, you didn't like it much?
Oh, it's good. This might just be one of the dumber things I've attempted on my trip. Today we are going to get lost in Medellin, Colombia. Oh no! Well, first of all, welcome back everybody. It has been quite some time since I've made a video. I got back from South America and Central America a few months ago, and I'm in the middle of my working part of my year. And like I said, I work very hard for 6 months and then travel very hard for 6 months. So in this period of time where I'm 6 months here working hard, I'm usually very focused on that. So that's why I haven't made any videos. But let's skip ahead. I want to explain how I'm able to do this. I want to explain how I save the money in the 6 months of time that I'm working and how I spend it in the 6 months of time. And maybe some of you guys will be curious, maybe nobody will watch this video. Either way, I want this as proof so that people are like, how do you do it? How do you travel for 6 months? How do you afford to do this type of lifestyle? Well, here it is. I'll show you. First of all, let me give you a little bit of background, a little bit of history about myself so that you understand kind of where I'm coming from. I moved down to California back in 2018 when I graduated university. I came down here and immediately started working in tech. I worked in tech for about 4 years. I always felt like an imposter. I always felt like I was like the youngest person. I was 22, working in tech as a project manager. I felt overpaid. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I was thrust into a career at way too young of an age. And so when the pandemic hit, I lost my job. I had some time to rethink some things. I had some time to think about what I wanted my life to look like. This is what I decided to do. I decided to spend the next 3 years of my life traveling for 6 months and working for 6 months. And if you're curious about what that work looked like, well, I'll explain to you right now. So going through university, when I was younger, I would always work the summer months when I wasn't in school. That was about 3 or 4 months of a year. And in those 3 or 4 months, I would work as a server at a restaurant up in Canada. And the thing about North America, if you're not from North America, is there's a tipping culture. So when you work as a waiter, you collect tips, and that's the majority of your income. You don't have any healthcare, you don't have any benefits. Well, unless you're in Canada, we had healthcare, but Canada's better, free healthcare. You don't have any healthcare, you don't have any benefits, you purely get tips and maybe like minimum wage or something like that. So when you're young and don't have as many responsibilities, it makes a lot of sense. And so when I got laid off from tech, after working 4 years in this career, I had this idea of picking it back up. I hadn't served for quite some time. I didn't know what the money was like. I'd completely forgot how I could work for 4 months of the summer and then somehow that money would last me through the school year. I didn't really conceptualize how much money I was making and all that stuff. And so when I decided I wanted to travel for the next 3 years, I wanted to find a way that I could make it work. And that is when I decided to become a waiter again. A waiter here in California. And boy, was I so surprised how much money you can make just in the summertime in a touristy spot here in California. And I have all the numbers laid out for you. I track all of my tips, my income, my salary, my expenses. I have it all laid out for you, and I'll show you guys exactly what that looks like. And before I show you the exact numbers, my goal for the 6 months is to save anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. That's after expenses, rent, food, everything. The goal is to save $15,000 to $20,000 in those 6 months, because typically my spending for those 6 months of traveling is anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. So anything on top of that is money that I can save and feel some sort of responsibility in progressing towards my future. But let's jump into the numbers. Let's do the fun part. Let me show you exactly how much money I make as a server here in California, working 6 months of the year during the peak season, during the busiest time of year. So I have the 6 months laid out here for you that I'm going to be working here in California. May, June, July, August, September, and October. And so far this year, I've worked May, June, July, and it's halfway through August right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the months leading up to the busiest time of summer. And if you want to see how the summer ends out for me, if you want to see how the rest of the months go, feel free to subscribe, feel free to follow the channel. I'll keep it updated as we go. But first, we're going to start here in May. And right away on the right side, you can see here exactly what our total earnings for the month are. That's before taxes, that's before expenses, that's before all of that. So for the month, it was $7,164 that we made in May. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that's going to be the worst month for sure that we're gonna have during this 6-month time period. That's gonna be the least amount of money that we're making in this time that we're working here. And I'll explain to you why. If you look at our tips over here, if you look at our average tips, you look at the days that we only worked 19 days this month. It was the first month coming back after traveling, so I was still getting back on the schedule. I was still figuring out a few things in my personal life at home, where I was staying, all these things, so I didn't get a chance to work as many days as I like. And you can see my average tips per shift, I was making $276 per shift, which is a pretty okay average. For the 6-month period that I'm here, I usually like to see that a little bit higher, and as I go further into the months, you'll see. And on the far side, my rent for this month was $1,200. I was staying with a friend, so I just contributed to the rent that much. And then I have my taxes that I paid, my phone bill, all of my fixed costs. One thing I do want to mention is I did sell my car when I started doing this 3 years of traveling. Car is a massive expense that doesn't seem to add a lot of benefit in my life. Right now I live close to work where I can walk or bike anywhere I need to be. I can get groceries close by. Everything I've kind of set up in my life right now is very close by, which is fantastic. I love it. So no need for a car. That expense, which would be massive, is completely gone. Normally I'll track my full expenses, but for the sake of this video, we're just gonna assume that I spend probably about $600 to $1,000 on top of what my expenses are. I've tracked my expenses a lot in the past. This year, I didn't really find it as important to track my expenses. Once you've established and tracked your spending in the past, at least for a few years like I have, I feel like it isn't as beneficial in the long run in a certain way, because you understand how you spend things, you understand what your lifestyle is like. So I didn't find it as beneficial this summer to track my individual expenses. Let's move on to June. And for May, I just want to point out one thing. You see up on the right here, my average hourly earnings was $60 per hours of worked. You can see down here at the bottom, this is the hours that I worked for the month of May. The averages will look a little bit different than the rest of the months because I was just starting to work here. I was probably working about 37 hours per week here at an average hourly rate of $60 per hour. That's pre-tax. Let's jump into June. June was a much better month. I worked more shifts and it was already starting to pick up for summertime. We did have a few shifts obviously that didn't do so well, but as you can see here, my average has already gone up to 286. As you can see from last month, that's a $10 average shift increase per month, which is great to see. We had a couple really good days in the beginning. We almost made $500 on this first Sunday, close to 500 on Saturday. June was progressively getting better. My average hourly earnings went up by $2, which is great to see. My total earnings for the month was $8,500, and that was just because I got more shifts. As you can see down here, I had an additional couple shifts, which was really nice. Our net income, which is allegedly what we went home with, was $4,800. That's gonna look closer to maybe $4,000 or $3,500 in net income for that month that I put in my pocket, because obviously I'm not including my living expenses outside of fixed costs in this chart. Now for the big month. This is the month that will probably shock quite a few of you, maybe not. Maybe you work in restaurants, maybe you know how July is in summer, peak season, California. This is the reason that I'm able to save as much money as I can. July. July is the best month. Let me show you. So right off the bat, for this month, you can see we're making $11,310 in income for the month. That's pre-tax, pre-whatever. That's how much we made for this month. And you can see our hourly earnings were $74 an hour. Not every month is gonna be like July. This is a once a year type of month where you make this much money. And if you go over, you see that my tip average was astronomically higher than what it was in the past 2 months, $395. I almost averaged $400 per shift, which is pretty bonkers if you think about it. The beginning of the month, the July weekend, was absolutely insane. We have $500, $582, $515. And if you go down, you see a few more 500s in there, 555, 501, 571. Those are all peak, fantastic shifts, middle of July. A ton of tourists are in town. We're working a lot. We're working very hard. And that's what kind of allows me to save all this money. This month alone netted me almost $7,000. Obviously, it's gonna be closer to about $6,000 after my expenses for the month, but that's $6,000 straight in my pocket, straight towards saving for that big goal of traveling for 6 months. And if we go down to the bottom, you can see how many hours I worked this month. So the first 2 weeks of the month, I averaged about 40 hours per week. And the next 2 week period was obviously a little bit less. So I averaged 74 hours for the 2 weeks, which is gonna be about 37 hours per week. So I'm not working like 80-hour weeks. I'm not working 60, 70, 80. I'm not in OT. I'm not working all these crazy hours. This is $11,300 purely in about a 35 to 40-hour work week. This isn't crazy hours. The time that you're working there is intense. It's a lot of work. It's exhausting, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I'm working 60-hour weeks. When I was working in tech, you know, maybe my consistency across the months was higher, but I also had to work more. I also had to bring my work home with me. When I work at the restaurant, I go for the time that I'm there, and when I'm done, I can go home and I don't have to worry about it. So for the lifestyle that I'm living right now, this is incredibly flexible. This is some of the best money you can make with as little barrier to entry, I guess you would say, as you could. So July is just chef's kiss. Beautiful. Love July. Best time of the year for making money. And that's where we're at. August, we're about halfway through. I have August all tracked down, but I'm not going to show you guys that until I complete the month. And I can show you guys at the end if you're curious. If you want to see what the total is after 6 months so far, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'll include it in another video close to when we leave to go on our trip. So that's it. That's the numbers. That's what it looks like for my life the last 3 years. And this is the third and final year that I think I'm going to be doing this travel lifestyle. Unless something kicks off or unless something picks up and I really start to earn a living from making videos or from travel content, then this is probably going to be the end for me. This is my last 6-month period. And I have a pretty crazy wild trip planned. I'm going to be going to India. I'm going to be going to Sri Lanka. I'm going to be going to Pakistan. I'm going to be going to Afghanistan. And I want to see a few of the other stands in that region, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. I'd love to go and see that. But the main part of my next 6 months is going to be India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Those are going to be 3 countries that I'm probably going to spend the most amount of time in doing some wild adventures. Hiking, motorbiking across the countries. I really want to have a chance to see what the Taliban-run Afghanistan is like. I'm incredibly excited for this next 6 months. I hope you guys are excited about it too, because I'm going to be creating more videos, I'm going to be creating more content when I'm traveling, but we're just a small channel. I'm really just doing this because I'm passionate about it and I love it. If you guys are interested and you're curious and you want to see how the rest of the story goes, how the rest of this traveling goes, just subscribe. And if you guys have any questions, you want to know more about it, more details, shoot a comment down below, follow me on Instagram, whatever you want to do, DM me, ask me how it's done. I'd love to share more information with you guys. And if you're really curious about it and you want to see something else more like this, just let me know. I'd love to share. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.